Okay, so this is worksheet number 3, and we're going to be talking about gas exchange. So it's up on the board, but and this is just a diagram. We're going to be going over this toward the end of the worksheet. But, what happens to gas when it enters the body? You can look at the... It mixes, okay. What else? Diffuses, right. Makes energy, right? Makes energy once it gets to your body cells, like we saw in the first worksheet, for you people who are watching. If you haven't seen the first one, maybe you should go back to it. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so basically, it chemically combines with other substances in the body cells, and this makes energy in the body cells. So that's why when you're running and you breathe faster, is because your body cells need to make energy. But in order to make energy, your body cells need oxygen. So that's why you breathe faster, so your cells can make more energy, because we don't want to be attacked by a pack of lions. Another thing that happens is gas can dissolve in the plasma. So this is your this is your, what do you call this? Your vessel. Your plasma is all this liquidy portion that I'm erasing right now. And inside your plasma, you have your red blood cells. So within your plasma, gas kind of dissolves and gets transported between your body cells, your red blood cell, and the red blood cells in your pulmonary capillary. So we're going to go through this much later, though. So looking at the statement number 2, 98% of oxygen is dissolved in blood plasma. This is false. 98% of oxygen is carried in the blood bound to hemoglobin in the red blood cell. And it's carried in hemoglobin as how is carbon dioxide carried in hemoglobin? In the red blood cell as bicarbonate ion. So just keep that in mind. This equation will come back. We'll come back to. So what makes up oxyhemoglobin? Well, oxygen and hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is kind of like a protein within your red blood cell, and oxygen can bind to it. So this is like hemoglobin. It's just something that's there. And it's really important you have iron for this, by the way. So if you see the word iron, hemoglobin. So hemoglobin, either oxygen can bind to it and make the red blood cell red, or you can have carbon dioxide bind to it, and then you have carboxyhemoglobin, which makes hemoglobin look blue. Not really, but for this sake, which makes the red blood cell look blue, so to speak. So that is that. So yeah, oxyhemoglobin is when oxygen binds to hemoglobin. And you need iron to do that. Fe is the chemical equation for iron. So if you see that in an exam, you've seen it before. I showed you now. So make all the below statements true. Now I'm asking for true statements, right, instead of false. What factors increase the release of oxygen from hemoglobin? And so all of these are all increasing. So let's just start from the beginning. So an increase in PCO2, if you have too much carbon dioxide in your body, oxygen is going to come off of hemoglobin and go into your tissues faster. It's going to increase that because carbon dioxide, I need to get rid of this oxygen so I can take the carbon dioxide. That's what hemoglobin does. So when you have a lot of carbon dioxide in your body cells, it kind of goes into your red blood, in your plasma, and your red blood cell is going to get rid of oxygen a lot faster because it wants to take carbon dioxide in order to get rid of it. So this is kind of how it goes. So if you have a bunch of carbon dioxide, oxygen dissociation is going to be a lot faster. That's going to increase. So increase in this increases that. A decrease in oxygen. So as you can see, there's carbon dioxide here. There's no oxygen in this area, right? So oxygen is going to come to an area of high concentration. Right? You got oxygen in here to an area of low concentration of oxygen. So that's the same thing there. So a decrease in the pressure of oxygen it's going to cause oxygen dissociation because it's trying to get from high oxygen to low oxygen, right? And that's good. We want that. We want it balanced. We want it even.
P just stands for pressure, right?
Yeah, P just stands for pressure. So if it's just, and I think they do that because if it's just O2, this oxygen could be anywhere. It could be out here, it could be inside your body. We don't know. So to make this simplified and harder for you, they decided to put a P in it for pressure of oxygen, and this is the oxygen, I just say, inside your body. So P means the pressure inside your body. Yep, good question though. Another thing that increases the release of oxygen is an increase in temperature. Now, why would our temperature increase? It's not a...
excited or running or sick.
Sick, fever. Fever increases temperature, right? Okay, so when we're running a fever, our body cells need to be able to metabolize and still be maintained. So it's going to also increase oxygen, if that makes sense, because it's trying to keep us. That's why, like, I guess, you need more energy to fight that infection off. So your body cells make energy from oxygen, and that energy can go throughout the rest of your body and help you maintain. So an increase in fever can increase the oxygen demand. That's why you see some people who are going. Another thing too with infection is like if you're, just say you get an infection that destroys your tissues and you have a lot of waste product, you have a lot of carbon dioxide, your body's gonna get really acidic, right? So if something destroys your tissues, you have a lot of waste product. If you have an increase in PCO2, an increase in a waste product, an increase in acidity, which will also increase your temperature because of the infection, it's also going to increase that oxygen demand to repair those tissues that were destroyed. So that's something else too, increase in fever. If you see or increase in temperature, it's like, well, how does that actually, but like you said too, like if you're running and exercising, you're also breaking down tissue. So you're heating up, and that's kind of telling your body, hey, you need to break down more oxygen to run from these lions. So I like lions a lot. So this ties right into an increase in acidity, okay? Because waste products, damaged organs, damaged vessels and everything also is an increase in acidity. Another thing too with exercise, like you were saying, is what is the leftover stuff in your muscles after you exercise? It's acidic, yeah. So when you exercise, you have all this waste product from your muscles. What is that called? And it hurts after a while? Lactic acid? Yeah. So an increase in acidity, increase in lactic acid, or an increase of PCO2, the pressure of carbon dioxide, that will also increase your body's, your red blood cells are going to get rid of oxygen a lot faster because it needs to metabolize. It needs to get everything back to homeostasis. So, and I provide explanations. This goes into it. I didn't actually go much into the infection portion of it, but just know that there when you go through it. So, but that's that. So the next portion of this, how much oxygen is in the venous blood? How much are those red blood cells in the venous blood saturated with oxygen? 75%. So oxygenated blood has 100% oxygen in it. Okay? Deoxygenated blood, or oxygen poor, I think that's more accurate. So there's oxygen poor, and there's oxygen rich. Oxygen rich blood is like rich chocolate, right? I guess that's the best way I can think about it. It's like really rich in oxygen, so it's had 100% oxygen in it. Something that's oxygen poor, it has 75% oxygen in it, which isn't a whole lot. And actually, you're going to see me use carbon dioxide as blue and everything, but the reason why oxygen poor blood is blue is because it's the color of your veins. Your blood is still red no matter what, it doesn't turn blue. But it's helpful in teaching for that matter. So it's just something interesting because you would think it would be 5%, but actually it's 75%. So that really tells you that your body really needs oxygen. It has to be at 100% or like 90%. Like anything I think below 90%, you're in trouble. So you'll learn that. Anything less than 90. Another thing too is, this is just an author, this is like a soapbox thing. Blood is never deoxygenated, it is always oxygenated, either oxygen rich, oxygen poor. You always have oxygen in your blood, so just keep that in mind. When hemoglobin becomes saturated, so saturated means when it becomes like more concentrated, I guess. Think about like a sock, when you put it in water, it kind of gets like saturated with water, you know? So when hemoglobin becomes saturated with oxygen, what is it that oxygen is combining with? Well, oxygen is combining with iron. So that's important. It came up twice. You better not get that wrong. So now we're going to go through some hemoglobin statements. So which statement is false? Because Janet likes these so much. So we're going to go through all the true ones. Hemoglobin in the lungs becomes 100% saturated with oxygen. Oxygen rich, which we like. Another true statement is more oxygen will combine with hemoglobin if the environment has a higher PO2. So in the lungs, you have a lot of oxygen in it, okay? Really concentrated in the lungs, it'll go from a high concentration to a low concentration. So that's why oxygen moves from the lungs to the blood. High in the lungs, low in the blood, it'll move from high to low. So more oxygen will combine with hemoglobin if the environment has a higher oxygen concentration, I guess, if that makes sense. Oxygen dissociation. So that's what this is. That's what we were just talking about. Oxygen dissociation is the hemoglobin being like, get out of here. Dissociate. Go away. Oxygen. This will be greater if the blood is concentrated with CO2. So more CO2 you have, the more your red blood cells are going to kick out oxygen. So these other statements. So the statement that is false. Okay, and those have rationales under it if you need to look at it. But the statement that is false says, high blood pH will promote the dissociation of hemoglobin. Okay, this is false because a high pH means alkaline. Okay? We want our bodies to be a little bit alkaline. Okay? So if we're alkaline, our body's in no hurry to neutralize it. That's what oxygen does. It kind of neutralizes. So this statement is false. To make this true, cross out high blood pH and make it low blood pH. Because a low blood pH means acidic. Right? In an acidic environment is kind of like if you're sick or if you have lactic acid. We don't like acid in our body. So just know low pH equals acid. If you ever see low pH, automatically think acidic. And then think alkaline is just the opposite of it. But some people get tripped up with the pH values of and everything, but low pH means acidic. So the lungs have a, let's see, blood is acidic, low pH, oxygen dissociation, yeah. So if you have more acid, this will happen more often. So more acid, oxygen dissociation will happen. So that's just something with hemoglobin. I'm trying to like beat it in your brains. So, so something else too, if you don't quite know what hemoglobin is, it's a protein inside the red blood cell, and it functions kind of like a mailman and a trash man. Okay? It's a mailman because hemoglobin delivers oxygen. It's like, here you go, here's your letter. But it's also a trash man because it gets rid of carbon dioxide. So that's kind of what hemoglobin does. It's the protein inside your red blood cell that delivers oxygen and takes out the carbon dioxide. Very important. We like hemoglobin. Lesson learned. But wait, there's more. So I'll let you that kind of seep in, because I think something fun is going to occur next. Does this make sense? Okay. Number 9, at high altitudes, the proportion of oxygen drops. This is false. So what is it with altitude that affects our breathing? There's what?
They don't have as much as oxygen as the.
So they don't have as much oxygen, which makes it harder. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Oxygen is this. What were you saying?
Just that the pressure stays. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Pressure?
In a higher altitude, the air is thinner, so the pressure isn't as
Yes.
high.
Yes. So what you were saying, I know that's what most people think.
Yeah.
Usually most people think they have less oxygen as altitude goes up, so that makes it harder to breathe. But what actually is, you have like 10 molecules here, and then when you go up on a mountain, you have 10 molecules. It's the same.
Okay.
However, the pressure down here is a lot more. So we have high concentration, high pressure, we'll go to low pressure, right? If we go up to another higher altitude, we still have 10 molecules of oxygen, you know? But when we go up to a higher altitude, it's not as much pressure. It's not as intense. So it kind of dissociates slower at high altitudes because the pressure is less. Does that make sense? So oxygen is the same, but the proportion of oxygen does not drop. The amount of oxygen is the same. So yeah, the pressure is a lot different. So oxygen is always the same. It's just the pressure difference. So, and if you go under the sea, there's like no oxygen there. So unless we like develop gills or something, but yeah. So there's that, and there's a whole little rationale, and I'll send it to you so you can look at it. The next portion of it, what is false of carbon monoxide? Well, you can die from it. This is true. Carbon monoxide poisoning. What is also true is when carbon dioxide is more difficult. So oxygen, like we had up here, it's really easy to dissociate. Carbon dioxide, though, is a little bit more stickier, so to speak. It's kind of harder to get rid of, okay? And carbon monoxide poisoning occurs when carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin more readily than oxygen. So not only is carbon dioxide harder to get rid of because it's stickier, it's also a lot faster. It binds to hemoglobin a lot faster than oxygen does, which is like, that's great, you know, the environment's like set out to kill us. You know, not only does it stickier and it's hard to get rid of, but it also binds a lot more readily. So if carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin a lot faster, well, there's no seats. There's no other places for oxygen to bind to, if that makes sense. So if all the seats are taken up on hemoglobin, well, get on the next bus, right? So the false statement is it can be treated with high exposure to CO2. This will kill your person. To make this statement true, you say it can be treated, carbon monoxide poisoning, the treatment for it is high exposure to oxygen, not carbon dioxide like that put. So those are just some facts about it. Number 11, why does carbon dioxide diffuse out of the tissues and into the capillaries? So over here, right, we have a lot of oxygen, right? So again, high concentration and low concentration. I'm going to beat this in your brains. So let's look at B really fast. Actually, let's look at A really fast. So your tissues, which are your body cells, have a higher concentration of carbon dioxide. So why does CO2 diffuse out of tissues and into the capillaries? Because the tissues have a higher concentration of PCO2, high to low concentration. So it'll go from your tissues to your plasma. Pretty simple. And then another thing, too, is because the capillaries have a low concentration. So you just remember one, and the other one, just remember it's the opposite. So it's just all pressure. So that's why I've been saying it. And I think you guys have understood it by now, hopefully. So that's that. So now we're going to get into the actual gas transport portion of it. And I'm going to look up let's see, is this now? Yeah. I'm going to look up a picture of a respiratory membrane really fast, which isn't too scary. So your respiratory membrane, please don't get smaller. There we go. So your respiratory membrane consists of the alveolar epithelium, or the alveoli, the basement membrane, and the capillary endothelium. So it consists of, what is it?
No, I didn't repeat it after you.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're fine. So in order for a respiratory membrane to exist, you need a capillary. You need alveoli, which is in your lung. Maybe I should do an alveoli. That would be a lot more anatomically correct. And then you need a basement membrane, which is right in between. So if this is your capillary, this is like your alveoli. Yeah, and your basement membrane is right between. So that's what you need for your respiratory membrane. If it asks for that, it's just 3 structures. So that's fun. And I'll put that picture as like the thumbnail for the video, so if you want to look back at that. So how is the majority of carbon dioxide transported to the lungs? All of these are how carbon dioxide transports to the lungs. All of these are pretty much true, but the one that is the majority of carbon dioxide, which statement is more true? It is carbon dioxide as a bicarbonate ion. So here's carbon dioxide, and his goal in life, his only purpose, is to become bicarbonate. And that's pretty sad in all life. So yeah, it's like your destiny. You can't control it anyway, apparently. So I'm sorry, carbon dioxide. So although all the above are ways carbon dioxide is transported, 70% of oxygen is transported as bicarbonate. So this is the equation. I'll send it with you, and I'm going to have it up here so when we discuss this gas transport, it'll help out. So this number 13 is answered by everything else below it, because now we're going to go into gas transport, and I'm going to draw it up on the board so it helps. So what is the sequence of carbon dioxide transport? And this is carbon dioxide transport, just this equation. That's it. That's all you have to memorize. So how did we get carbon dioxide out of the body? So that's why we want to transport it. So the first location is we're going to start in the red blood cell, okay? And we're going to be going from the plasma to the red blood cell anywhere in the body. So this can be in your leg, in your arm, in your head, whatever part of the body you like best. So that is that. So I'm going to erase these labels as we go. So this is your plasma. Here, red blood cell, your body cells. I don't like that. Go away. So CO2 diffuses from the blood plasma. Where's my blue? So CO2 is going to come out of the, right, because CO2 is a waste product. So it's coming out of the body cells, kind of like stuff comes out of us, right? So CO2 diffuses from the blood plasma and into the red blood cell. Okay? So inside the red blood cell, they're nice and circular, right? Because they're full of water. So that's where the H2O is coming from. We like our red blood cells full of water. That's nice, right? So we're now inside of the red blood cell. Can we see this? Yes, we can. So inside the red blood cell, carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid. So when we look at this equation, carbon dioxide is in blue, plus water forms carbonic acid. So these will stick together and form H2CO3, carbonic acid. And then something else I found is the enzyme carbonic anhydrase glues carbon dioxide and water together. So if you ever see the word carbonic anhydrase, again, so ACE is enzyme. Yes, exactly. Whoops. Let's go back to 3rd grade. All right, so ACE means enzyme. So whenever you see carbonic anhydrase, it is the glue. It kind of glues them together. It is the gluing enzyme. So while some enzymes break things down, like in the stomach that we learned, some enzymes bring things together. So that's metabolism, breaking things down, putting things back together. So that's carbonic anhydrase. And this is the equation for that. You have carbon dioxide and water turning into carbonic acid, which is this H2CO3. Still inside the red blood cell, carbonic acid then splits apart. So it kind of just splits on its own naturally and forms hydrogen ion, which I'm going to do in red, I guess. Hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. HCO3 minus. And something interesting, common that I've seen is some people mix up carbonic acid with bicarbonate ion. The thing that can really sticks out is this negative sign right here. If it has a positive or negative symbol, it is an ion. This one is acid. There's no ion. There's no positive or negative sign. Does that make sense? So if you need a quick little way to remember which one it is, it's the one with a negative or the positive. Hopefully your instructor indicates a negative or a positive and doesn't just leave it as that. So that's a good way to remember it. So that's still inside the red blood cell. Carbonic acid splits to form it. So that's what this equation is, this part. Your carbonic acid right here forms bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. Ion because of the plus and minus at the top and bottom. Does that make sense so far? So we're inside the red blood cell. We're happy. So when you read this equation, you're going to read it from left to right. So the first thing you do when you get at your exam, write this equation. Write this equation and it will help you. First thing, before you look at anything else, flip it over, write this equation down so you can use it as a reference. So there's that. This is just me explaining the difference between ions. I just told you basically what it is. So if you want to read this over, go ahead, but we don't need to go over that. So now we're going to go into the blood plasma. So we're going to go from the red blood cell into the plasma. Next. So bicarbonate ion, which is this green guy, HCO3 minus, is going to diffuse out of the red blood cell and into the plasma. If bicarbonate, so have you guys heard of chloride shift? Okay, so when bicarbonate, so let's just go through this. If bicarbonate ion leaves the red blood cell, it needs to be replaced. Okay, so if we have a cell, we want it to be neutral. We want it to be positive. We want it to be negative. If we lose that bicarbonate ion, that bicarbonate ion, which is negative, as you can see over here, right? Over there, I guess. Your cell is going to become too positive. In your body, even though optimism is great in the mind, it's not good for the body. So we need something to balance this out. So when bicarbonate ion leaves, okay, it needs to be replaced. And the molecule to replace bicarbonate ion is chloride. So you have chloride just naturally, oh no, that's sodium. You have chloride naturally like just floating around in your plasma. So chloride just kind of takes the place. And that's called your chloride shift. Chloride shift is when chloride switches places with bicarbonate. So that's where that's coming from, if you ever see that. So the next question is asking which ion enters the red blood cell when bicarbonate ion leaves? It's chloride. So we're just going to draw it like this so we know that this one leaves. And then this guy is just, this hydrogen is just going to stay in the red blood cell. You also have hydrogen within your blood too, just kind of you have electrolytes just in your blood hanging out. And hydrogen and chloride are some of those, so just keep that in mind too. But this hydrogen is just going to stay. Okay, but you have some hanging out. So the leftover hydrogen ion temporarily combines with the hemoglobin. So hydrogen will just combine with hemoglobin, and it'll find home that way. And sometimes it dissociates, sometimes it doesn't. But for the sake of this, it combines. So now we're going to be going from the plasma into the red blood cell of the pulmonary capillary. So that's what this next overview is. So this is your pulmonary capillary. And I'm just going to make that a little bigger. What did I do? Oh. And this is your red blood cell inside your lung, your pulmonary capillary. So this is your lungs. Okay? So this is like the final step. So this is like step 3. So bicarbonate ion in hydrogen will enter the red blood cell in the pulmonary capillary. So we have all this going on. Your hydrogen will go into your capillary. HCO3 minus. And then your hydrogen that's hanging out in your blood will also combine. Okay? So now we're going to go from hydrogen ion, bicarbonate ion, we're going to go in this direction now. So we go here, and then we come back. So that's why these arrows are pointing both ways. But you first go from left to right, and then right to left. So from your red blood cell, this is happening in your red blood cell. You produce hydrogen or bicarbonate ion, and then in your lung capillary, you're going to start with bicarbonate. You're going to start with hydrogen, and then we're going to produce carbon dioxide once again because we want to breathe carbon dioxide out, right? So that's why we're going in reverse. So if bicarbonate ion and hydrogen combine, what is that going to form? It's an acid. Carbonic acid. Mm-hmm. So H2CO3. And there's no plus or negative, so it's an acid. Okay? So once the two ions are in the red blood cell, they combine to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then splits apart to form water and carbon dioxide. So water, H2O, is just going to stay inside the red blood cell just to maintain its shape and everything and homeostasis. But then it's also, carbonic acid is also going to split and form carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will then leave the red blood cell. So it will then leave the red blood cell in the pulmonary capillary and go into the alveoli. And then when it goes from the alveoli, it'll go into your lungs and then exhale. And then we're done. So now imagine this happening. Every breath you take. And then we could go in reverse if you wanted to with oxygen. Yeah, because you need to get that carbon dioxide out of you. So again, when you look at this equation, you're going to read, so see step A, step B, step C, you're going to read from right to left because this is the end product. We begin with it over here, and then we go through. It turns into bicarbonate ion because 70% of carbon dioxide is carried as bicarbonate. And then we'll come over to pulmonary. It'll be rearranged again, and you're going to breathe it out. So, yeah, there's that. And I will take a picture of this, so. But if you want to, go
I
ahead.
attempted to just have this little side, but then I quickly realized, no, I should have used the whole paper.
Yeah, so that is that, though. So hopefully this is a little less intimidating than what you have in your book if anybody looked at it. That's a scary picture. So I'm going to look up a scary picture of it, and we can be happy. So let's look up. Yeah, I think something like this is in your book. So
Yeah.
something like that. No, this just means this for the most part.
Looking at it and I was like, no wonder.
But look, right here, look, carbonic anhydrase, right? We talked about this, didn't we? When carbon dioxide and water came together to form carbonic acid. Carbonic anhydrase is right there.
Well, this one's not too bad. 759.
Yeah,
On the book? Yeah.
so.
It doesn't look too bad.
And then you also have
Now
your
that I understand.
chloride shift right up there. So, I mean, it's a little bit more cartoony and less intimidating. So, actually, when I did my exam, first thing I pulled out is I drew this. I was like, so, and then I knew what I was talking about. So, but that equation, hopefully, because I'm like, I had to have it, like that muscle memory of it. But yeah, so the cartoon helps. That one's pretty nice too. So the only thing you have to worry about, though, is carbon dioxide transport. I don't think anything oxygen you need to know. So just carbon dioxide transport. How do we get rid of it? So, but that concludes the session. So yeah, that is that. Or unless you guys want to go over